I asked Dahlia to read the intro, correct?
I know I'm reading the intro.
Oh, you're reading the intro. Sorry, Kathy. Okay, Kathy's reading the intro. Dahlia's reading the candles. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So hi everybody, welcome. Rabbi Simcha is on vacation, so I'll be leading the service tonight. Hopefully everybody knows what they're supposed to read. I think I know everybody's supposed to read. All right, now we're gonna start. I'm gonna start sharing the screen and we're gonna start our program tonight. So,
And if everyone who's not reading can remain muted, thank you.
mhm. All right, let me just bring up the right section here. Why is this? I don't know why this is enlarged. It's very weird. I don't understand what. Here, I got it. I got it. Okay. All right. So now we're going to start with the welcome. So let me start sharing screen and we will take it from there. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Can you see it, everybody? Okay, great. So welcome to Shabbat, and Kathy, take it away. And everybody should be muted.
We gather on this Shabbat as a community of believers. We believe that Judaism is the entire experience of the Jewish people. We believe in the value of celebrating Jewish culture and identity. We believe that all those who choose to celebrate with us are part of our community. We believe that being together strengthens and enhances our humanistic Jewish experience. May this Shabbat be a time of peace and rejuvenation. This is a time of transition. We move from our everyday week to the experience of Shabbat. We turn from the concerns of the outside world and become quiet and peaceful. We, at this moment, in this time, create a community of humanistic Jewish believers. Let us pause and take note as we begin the journey of this Shabbat.
Rebecca, you want to? I think we were supposed to open with a song and we didn't. So Rebecca, if you'd like to please start with the first song.
Of course.
What song is the first one?
The Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, I have to find that. Just a minute. I'm sorry. I'm completely
No
not.
worries. I believe
this
it's
in so
the
long.
song 20 at the bottom. I'm not
Okay.
sure what page, but
Yeah, no, I'm
or
trying.
maybe that's the page.
Song 20. I'm just gonna find it. 1 minute.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm really sorry. This is like, it's Shalom Aleichem. I'm just finding it. I'm so sorry, people. This is not how we normally go. I haven't done this in so long, but I'm not. Okay. Shalom Aleichem. Here we go. Okay.
Yay.
Okay.
Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShabbat, Ohavei Shabbat Shalom. Welcome and treasure things that bring us pleasure. For now, our work we can start. Learn from daily learning, take some time for learning. Use this day for friends and family. Shabbat binds us, teaches us, and reminds us of the values we share through history. Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShabbat, Ohavei Shabbat Shalom. Join us and sing out, let each Shabbat bring about strain from all that we've known. Turn from daily learning, take some time for learning, use this day for friends and family. Shabbat binds us, serves us and reminds us of the values we share through history.
Can you hear me? I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I could hear you. To renew ourselves for the week ahead, so that we will have strength for others, our families, and our part in making the world a better place. We kindle the lights of Shabbat as symbols of human enlightenment and human compassion, to celebrate our coming together, to illuminate our lives and the warmth we find in our community. We remember the generations before us who lit candles as we do and found beauty and serenity in their light. Let us say together, Na'eh haor ba'olam, Na'eh haor ba'adam, Na'eh haor ba'shabbat, Nukir et or haShabbat. How wonderful is the light in the world. How wonderful is the light within humanity. How wonderful is the light of Shabbat. We cherish the light of Shabbat.
If you have candles, feel free to light them. And thank you very much, Dahlia. I'm sorry, I figured out why you couldn't hear me. I was muted and didn't realize it. Sorry about that. Okay, Rebecca, take it away with a Fori.
Sure. Na'e haor ba'olam, Na'e haor ba'adam, Na'e haor ba'shabbat, Nukir et or haShabbat. Efo tikvati, tikvati, Efo kopi, Egampa, Efo kopi, Pegampa. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me. And in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me, and in you, and in you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rich, you were going to read the values of humanistic Judaism, so take it away.
Judaism is far more than many people allow it to be. Some people view it very narrowly, seeing only its religious side. Others perceive it broadly, emphasizing its ethical outreach. Judaism is more than theology and moral rules. It is more than parochial faith and universal sentiments. It is the living culture of a living people. Judaism is family, love, and nurturing. Judaism is memory, roots, and pride. Judaism is music, dance, and humor. Everything that Jewish people throughout the ages did and yearned to do is Judaism. Judaism did not fall from heaven. It was not invented by a divine spokesman. It was created by the Jewish people. It was molded by Jewish experience. It was flavored by Jewish sadness and Jewish joy. Life is an evolution, a continuous flow of transformations. And so is culture. When circumstances change, people change. When people change, their laws and customs change. The healthy people welcomes change. It understands its history. It knows its own power. It leads the past into the future. Secular humanistic Jews affirm the power of people. We affirm the power of common sense and human reason. But above all, we strive for human dignity. Human dignity is Jewish dignity.
Thank you, Rich. So we have another song. What's the next song, Rebecca?
This next one is Lo Yisa Goy.
Which I'm going to find.
That's on page 50, I believe.
Page 50, that would help.
I believe that's what I wrote in here some time ago.
Well, it's not, there it is. Okay. It's not on page 50 in my PDF, but it's here.
No worries.
Okay.
As long as we got it.
We got it.
Lo isa goy el goy el. Lo yima du o bil tama. Lo isa goy el goy el. Lo yima du o bil tama. Lo isa goy el. Lo yima du o bil tama. Everyone divine and free will live in peace and harmony. And everyone divine and free will live in peace and harmony. And into plowshares beat their swords. Nations shall study war no more. And into plowshares beat their swords. Nations shall study war no more. Lisa Goyel, Goyel. Oh, you must do me a pama. It's the boy, boy. Oh, you must do me a pama.
Thank you, Rebecca. So now I'm going to stop the share. And if you have anything that you want to tell us about good things that are happening or things that are on your mind, please feel free. Wave frantically at the screen or you know, raise your hand in the thing. Jim, you have something to say. Go ahead. We'll start with you.
Yes, the project I had been on the verge of finally happened. I had been working to try and get a interview on a podcast, and it ended up two podcasters were in the same interview, and so my talk is actually on two separate podcasts that are out there. So it was actually kind of a career high to be a talking head on a bunch of different podcasts. This one about the connections between the Beatles and Dr. Who.
Would you like to put the link in the Zoom in the chat later? You can do it later.
Yeah.
After the service, he's going to put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to share? Thank you, Jim. Anybody else want to share anything that's going on with the, I saw something in the chat. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. We got people saying congratulations, Jim. Anybody else wave frantically or otherwise let me know that you want to say something. I will try and see. Jay, you've got, did you just wave your hand? No? Oh, okay. No? Okay. Anybody else?
Oh, I want to raise my hand
Okay.
because I'm definitely sad that my friend think that she won't faint. She won't faint because I think the discussion part will be the last part, and she shouldn't be afraid of anything. That she will break like anything. I think it's good thinking.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dominic. Was there, yeah. Thank you. Anyone else?
So Howard's not
Dahlia.
for reasons I'll explain, but I think a couple months ago, he got a change in job title to something he's the kind of thing he always wanted. He's now lead scientist for statistics and methods in his group. So
That's nice.
he's not here. So tell for him.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else with anything they want to share? No? Okay. So I'm going to start sharing the screen again. And we'll go back to, all right, I'm going to page 9. Okay. So now actually I'm not I'm going to just read this part and then we're gonna stop the share again. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we now turn our minds and hearts towards those who need our love, who are ill, who are lonely, who suffer pain, or who have been wrong. If you have anybody that you're thinking of tonight who needs our good thoughts, I'm going to stop the share and please raise your hand and tell us about this person. Dahlia?
So Howard is not here because he's about to board a plane to England. His sister Judy, that many of you have heard about, appears to be in the final stages of her ovarian cancer. She was admitted to in-home hospice care.
We're very sorry. Please give him our love. That's we've been hearing about her for a long time and we're sorry to hear that. Anybody else have anybody that they're thinking of who needs some support right now? No?
Hi,
Okay.
it's Shauna.
Hi, Shauna.
I'm gonna keep my camera off for now, but my daughter Lily, who is 4, has a friend who is also 4, and she's been in the hospital for quite a few weeks with autoimmune encephalitis. So just hopefully everyone can send her some good wishes. Her name is Maya.
Sure. Thank you. We will do that. Thank you. That's hard when a child's in the hospital. Anyone else have anything that they want to mention? Anybody they want to mention? No?
Yeah, my mother, obviously.
Yeah.
Just to make everything as tragic as possible, their 50th wedding anniversary is also in 3 weeks' time. So
Right.
she's absolutely devastated.
I am so sorry, David. That's
Yeah.
hard. I know. It's very hard. We will be thinking of your mom. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'm gonna share the screen again. Come on over, there we go. May all who suffer know they are not alone. May they experience refuah shlema, the renewal of body and spirit. Rebecca?
The source of strength that dwells so deep within us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing and let us stay shine. May those in need of healing, the refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us stay shine.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay. Let us proclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us, each in our own way, take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind in ourselves and others. And let us say, Lu Yahi, may it be so. I'm going to stop share again. And if you have anybody that you are remembering or a yard site or anything that you want to commemorate tonight, please let us know, raise your hand, wave, do something to let me know. Yes, Rich.
Tomorrow begins my mother's second yard site.
Anyone else? I know, David, you are going through some stuff right now that you told us. And we're very sorry. Anyone else? I'm wondering if I'm seeing some hands. No? Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. And go ahead, Rebecca, you can sing Zecher Tzedek.
With our tears in our sorrow, we remember. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Act of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. And cannot take that which is lost in our hearts. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. Zecher Tzadik Livracha.
Thank you. Okay, I think I skipped. All right, well, now we're up to the wine. So Jim, would you please read for us?
We celebrate the fruit of the vine and nature's gifts. As we bend nature to our pleasure, we also think about our duties as caretakers. We dedicate this wine to the joy of Shabbat, to the lives of generations past and generations to come, to the planet that sustains us. Let us say together, Bahim HaKaim Ba'olam, Bahim HaKaim Ba'nu, Bahim Hagafen B'Kayim. We celebrate the life within the world. We celebrate the life within us. We cherish those who grow and tends the fruit of the vine, Chaim, to life.
If you have wine or some other beverage, please feel free to partake. Rebecca.
Naim HaChaim Ba'olam, Naim HaChaim Ba'anu, Naim Megalei Pri Hagafen L'Chaim.
Did I ask somebody to read the challah? I can't remember. I think I did. Helene, was this what I asked you? Well, I didn't. Feel free. Helene, please read the challah blessing for us.
Yeah, I thought it was something else, but I'm happy to
I
read
thought it was
this.
something else too, and I don't know what's going on. Go ahead.
So breaking bread together is an ancient custom in many cultures. It signifies sharing, fellowship, and coming together in peace. We reenact this ritual together as a sign of our common humanity, our care for one another, and for those less fortunate than ourselves. Na'e matanat hamazon, na'e alma kepenu, na'e lechem haaretz b'tei Avram. How wonderful is the gift of food. How wonderful is the work of our hands. How wonderful is the bread of the earth. We cherish those who bring forth bread from the earth.
Rebecca.
Nae matnat hamazon, nae hakenu, nae lechem haaretz b'tei Avram.
Thank you. If you have bread, please eat it. Who did I ask to read the conclusion? Now I can't remember. Okay, well, I'll do it then. Let us stand together now to proclaim our shared ideals and our will to act on them. Let us remember those who have come before us, who have given us life, love, and culture. Let us work together in mutual aid to benefit all. Let us make a world of beauty to be shared by every living being. Let us all be thankful for all we enjoy in life. Let us work for peace in our relationships, our communities, and our world. Let us.
Yes, this one is Lo Alecha. It's song number 14. I wrote page 50 again, which I don't think is right on the PDF, but
It's okay,
hopefully
I'm gonna find it. It's coming. Number 14, I'm gonna find it.
Yep.
There it is. Okay.
Yay.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everybody. That's the conclusion of our service. Thank you very much for everybody who did the reading tonight. Thank you for your beautiful music, Rebecca, as usual. Thank you to Kathy for the teching, and thank you to Shauna, who is helping us put this on YouTube. We're going to start our program tonight. So Kathy, feel free to introduce our program.
Yes, before that, some announcements. This Sunday we have our annual meeting. It'll be online. I forget what time it starts.
7:30.
7:30. 7:30. So please come. We'll give you highlights of the past year and what we have going forward.
You have to RSVP to get the link.
Next Thursday is our monthly grief Zoom meeting. So if you have anything that you want to talk about or discuss with anyone, please come. Each Wednesday is our weekly Zoom schmooze, and Sema's classes, which are, I don't remember what days, but we have them.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I believe. And Sunday is our last kids' school of the season. So it's going to be graduation for the kids who are graduating from kids' school, and the last day, and there's going to be a celebration. So if you have kids in kids' school, or you know somebody that you want to celebrate who's graduating from kids' school, you can let the office know that you're coming. You'll get the location if you don't already know it. And kids' school starts at 3 o'clock on Sunday.
Yes, and Talmud is on Mondays, as per usual.
The Talmud class goes on Mondays. Any other announcements that we can think of, Kathy? I'm trying to remember. I don't think there are any right now.
That's it.
Okay. So let's
Yeah.
introduce our speaker, Jay.
So Jay Eden, he is a wonderful member of our community. He's part of the DEI committee. He's an advocate and a scholar, and he's here to talk to us about the horrible legislation that's been going on.
Just take it away, Jay.
So hopefully I'll be talking about the horrible legislation and also about means of resistance and pushback, but I'm going to start with the bad stuff. So I'm going to open, can I share my screen? Yeah. Oh no, is there any way I can share screen? It looks like it says.
Whoever
you
can
can.
do it,
You can now.
Can now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, so what you're seeing is an anti-trans legislation risk map of the United States. So the states with the worst laws passed are dark red. Those with high risk within 2 years are bright red. Moderate risk within 2 years are sort of orange. Low risk within 2 years are light blue. And states with significant protections and safeguards are turquoise. And then there's Florida. And I'm sharing this map because I want to start this with the context that I haven't visited my parents since before my child was born 1.5 years ago. Because right now it is not safe for my spouse, my child, or me to travel in Florida because their anti-trans legislation is strong enough that, among other things, if any of us had a medical emergency, hospitals could refuse us treatment, and we would run the risk of potentially having CPS involved if anything happened, if there were any kind of emergency involving our child. This is part of a trend that has dominated state legislation for the last couple years. Click over to 2024. This year, 580 anti-trans bills were submitted in 42 states. Of those, 40 have passed, 328 are still active, 212 have failed. New York is in a comparatively good spot with all of those. While there is legislation that's been submitted here, none of it has even gotten through committee, and we have fairly strong protections that exist. The rest of the country is not nearly so lucky, and that's better numerically than 2023, when 86 bills passed across 24 states. And these are bills that primarily attack, at least initially, trans youth's access to gender-affirming care, which I want to go into a little bit because there's a lot of misinformation that's been spread about this, and a lot of these bills are built on that misinformation. And I think knowing standard practices and common practices around this is really helpful for determining what's going on, and also for, again, understanding what's happening. For young children, transition looks like usually a name change and wearing clothing that they feel comfortable in. And that's the case through pretty much immediate pre-puberty. Some trans girls want to grow their hair out long, some don't. Some trans boys want to cut their hair short, some don't. And that's about as far as gender and gender presentation go for children. If you think about if you have a small kid or have had a small kid, people talk about, how can we explain this? How can we talk through kids about this? And I remember as a kid having classmates who believed that, if you had long hair, that made you a girl. And it was that simple. And it wasn't really a big deal. And kids are remarkably and strikingly matter of fact about this stuff. So before puberty, the standard, again, treatment is medication called puberty blockers. These have been in use for decades, primarily for a condition called precocious puberty, which is when kids start to hit puberty very, very young. And what they basically do is delay puberty while a child is on them. And their purpose is twofold here with trans and with non-binary kids, and with kids whose gender identity doesn't fit their assigned sex. The first is to give them time, because then this is a compromise. This is basically for people who say, well, I don't want my kid to make a major decision about their future and their identity at 10 or 11. Let's see what this looks like in a couple of years. And this means that the child doesn't have, and this goes with the second one, which is that the child doesn't have to go through the trauma of experiencing a puberty that doesn't align with their gender identity. And then once they're old enough, which can be 13, 14, 15, 16, they're put on gender affirming, gender appropriate hormones, or can be, again, if it's medically indicated. And usually, if they are going to pursue or be offered any kind of gender affirming surgery or care, that's something that happens into adulthood. So a lot of the legislation that's out there is built on the premise that small children are being pushed into gender affirming surgery, which is radically, radically untrue. And all of these, I should say, it's a relatively recent development that these steps don't require years and years of hoop jumping and signing off from a therapist. And even within my memory, don't require, for example, heterosexuality and extreme gender conformity. I had a very, very good friend who was transitioning in the early aughts, who had her therapy clothing, which was the clothing that she wore to appointments with the therapist, who could sign off or not on her medical care, which was always very, very feminine dresses, which weren't what she wore in the normal course of events, but because she had to come off that way or she wouldn't be approved. So this is a little bit of background on the care and sort of the history of the care that the legislation is attacking. Now that's been updated by WPATH, which is the medical association that primarily issues care recommendations for transgender and non-binary and gender non-conforming folks, to be on an informed consent basis, which I think most of the people whom it actually impacts are much happier about. But I'm coming into this assuming that I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. And let's see, how do I stop share, pause share, okay. No, unshare. I'm not sure how to just
There should
stop.
be something up at the top. There
Okay,
you
well
go.
that, whatever that was, it worked. So I'm assuming coming into this with the environment it is, the congregation it is, the people we are, and the conversations that my spouse and I had with the rabbi before we came, that a lot of what I'm telling you is old news. Among other things, a happier statistic, Jews have the highest rates of trans inclusion and acceptance of any demographic group in the United States. And that's something that, while it's weighed in the directions you'd expect, is surprisingly inclusive of the Orthodox community, which, while there is perpetual debate around it, there are, I think, the precedent for gender being fluid and flexible, and for gender identity or gender of a soul, not necessarily aligning with gender of a body, exist in Midrash, exist in Halakha, and there are increasing, and there are also increasing, Jewish legal documents and studies being put out by transgender rabbis and scholars, adapting Jewish practice to and answering questions about the questions, some of which are questions of language, some of which are intensely practical questions, like if you are an Orthodox Jew, or if you are a trans man and you convert to Orthodox Judaism, how do you handle the question of circumcision? To which I don't know the answer, but it's theoretically out there, and people far more qualified than me have considered it. And that in and of itself is sort of the second direction I want to take this, which are ways to push back and ways to challenge this, because trans people are a small community, and we are a singularly vulnerable community. I'm going to say, if you want to put questions in the chat for now, this is going to be pretty short, and we'll do Q&A afterwards. But if you want to have a question fresh in your mind, just drop it in the chat for the moment, please. So we are a very small and very vulnerable community because we became very visible before we had significant political organization and any level of political power. So we were a subject before we really had the collective volume to define the conversation. There was an article that came out in 2014, I believe, in Time, describing the trans tipping point. It was with Laverne Cox on the cover, and it was and that was almost a decade ago this week, because it's been revisited in a number of articles and in a number of examinations. And what that tipping point represented was that about 1 in 10 people knew a trans person. And now it's something like 42% of Americans know at least one trans person, or have had contact with at least one person they know to be trans. And you'd expect that to take public sentiment in the opposite direction. And the ironic thing is that it largely does. The legislation that's being pushed is in opposition to public sentiment. So the first thing that people can do, and the first thing I recommend folks to do if they want to resist it, is education. Self-education, friends education, education when you're sitting, at a table and someone makes a casual comment about the risk of men in young girls' bathrooms, which is not a thing that actually happens. And my favorite, and also just learning about your friends, about the people beside you, about the communities and experiences outside your own, and believing them. I think one of the things that's very, very difficult for a lot of cisgender people, and those cisgender people are people whose gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. So with the ways that their bodies are identified by medicine and society, is that it's really hard to imagine wanting, really identifying as a gender other than your own. And I think that empathy with an understanding of trans experience takes a certain leap of faith for a lot of people. And the understanding that someone else's experience may not have an analog within your own. There may not be a point of significant identification for you, and still believing that experience is real and valid beyond yourself. Which I think is again, a significant thing that fuels anti-trans sentiment and fuels those laws, is that if you have people who have, people who are not transgender, who are thinking, you know, why would I want, if you have a cisgender straight man saying, why would I want to go into a women's bathroom? The answer to that are going to be very different than the reasons that a trans woman would want to go into a women's bathroom, which are largely to pee. So again, sort of having that different frame of reference. In terms of education, so one of the things that comes with being trans is doing a lot of educating of friends, of family, of ideally well-meaning people, often less well-meaning people. I'm going to recommend some resources at this point for that and for self-education. And the first and foremost is actually a picture book called Who Are You? Oh, I have my screen is blurring, but it's called Who Are You? The Kid's Guide to Gender Identity. And it's the single best resource I've ever found that's just a straight walkthrough of things of standard terms around gender identity or around assigned sex and around, you know, the difference between gender identity and gender presentation. It's the book that I recommended to friends and family when I came out. It's one that when I was working in a bookstore was my employee recommendation for 8 straight months. And it's absolutely terrific. Yes, that is the link. Thank you. The other things I'm going to recommend are places to keep abreast of both current legislation and current metacriticism of media, because one of the big issues and one of the things that's really let these laws take off is that a lot of very large, very credible media outlets have gotten swept into the anti-trans narrative that has informed the laws. There have been some really appalling there's really appalling data and studies. If you search for this, I don't have the numbers on hand, but the number of times that, for instance, the New York Times has used the phrase trans controversy versus the number of times they've quoted an actual trans person. And it's to the point that a large number of New York Times employees actually posted a very, very angry open letter to the publication, to which New York Times responded extremely poorly. But the 2 sources that I recommend most for this are Erin Reed, who has a newsletter called Erin in the Morning, who reports almost exclusively on trans-related policy and legislative issues. And a blog called Assigned Media, which is written by someone named Erin Urquhart, who does meta commentary on representations of and media conversations around trans people and transition. And between the 2 of them, these are both trans people who are working independently. I recommend following them, and if you can, and this is going to bring me to my second point, I highly recommend paying for subscriptions to them. Because the other really big thing that you can do if you're looking for immediate ways to push back against the anti-trans stuff going on right now, and if you're in a position to financially, is to support grassroots trans or advocacy organizations and mutual aid funds. I'm going to drop a list again. Them magazine has an extremely well and continually curated list of 100 local organizations. They shift them in and out fairly regularly. It's a great starting point. And these are local organizations who are really doing the bulk of the significant work and the significant fighting, both to protest the policies that are being pushed and to make sure that people have continued access to care and continued access to things like housing, because we are extremely, extremely disproportionately likely to be unhoused, to be impoverished, and especially in the case of Black trans women, to be involved in the criminal legal system. So those are all things to sort of know and see and be aware of, and that's a place to start pushing back. The other, so those are sort of the things I recommend to New Yorkers, because again, we have legislators who pretty much have their heads screwed on right, and who are not particularly falling for this. But continuing to speak and have conversations and to learn and to educate others is the biggest and I think most fundamental force of resistance that we look for and ask for. And there are a couple of reasons to do it. Some are obvious. Some are that you can convince people of things. Some are less obvious, which is that the experience of being the only trans person in a room where people are debating your right to exist is tempered significantly when there's someone else saying this is not an ethical debate to be having. And being that voice and speaking out for that stuff and saying this is not a niche concern, this is a human concern, this is a matter of autonomy and dignity and basic self-determination, is incredibly valuable, not only in reaffirming our rights to exist in shared and social and communal spaces, but in making those places actively inclusive. And that's pretty much what I have presentation wise. I'm sorry, I did a lot of research and then completely failed to actually prepare notes. So I was kind of winging it here. But if anyone has any questions, now is a great time. Oh, the CAS report. So Rich asks, can you comment on the CAS report from the US that seemed pretty competent and mostly opposed most puberty blockers and other medical interventions? I would strongly I think seemed is the operative word there, and seemed pretty competent. The CAS report is an unbelievably unethical bit of cherry picking. It's been denounced actively by most major medical associations at this point. And the folks who wrote it were directly involved with, among other things, Ron DeSantis's medical advisory committee, and we're taking cues from them. So, and again, I think Assigned Media is a great place to look for commentary on the CAS report that goes into a lot more detail than I can off the cuff. But the CAS report is scientifically and medically, it's garbage. It should not, or it hasn't really made it past the process of peer review. And the fact that policy is being based on it says a lot more about the relative scientific literacy of the people making the policy than anything else. Dominic and then Samantha.
So I have a question. What is actually going on in Florida? You can.
So, Dominic, your audio is going in and out for me. I don't know if it's your connection or mine. Would you mind typing it in the chat?
I will.
I'm sorry.
Set it up. So, what is going on in the yes? What is going on in the Florida? But you can actually live your life. By going to Florida. Do you hear me?
So what's going on in Florida is basically, through a combination of legislation and executive order, Florida has effectively, among other things, determined that medical professionals can refuse to treat people on the basis of gender identity. So which basically is one of those, if you go there and everything goes fine and nobody clocks you and you don't have any kind of emergency, you're good. But basically means that if you risk a major medical if you have any kind of emergency that requires medical care, you're kind of in a toss-up situation as to whether you can safely get it. They also have extremely, extremely aggressive policies regarding basically akin to Texas's, which basically say that any kid with a parent who is trans or gender nonconforming should be automatically investigated by Child Protective Services. The extent to which that's enforced is extremely varied, but again, it's a question of whether and to what extent those are risks that you're willing and comfortable taking on your behalf and on behalf of your family, if you're in those positions.
So I can tell that being on the dermatological department when it was, when I came out as a transgender, they put me in this single room.
I'm sorry,
Sometimes,
you've got there's a lot of static, and I'm having a lot of trouble understanding, like hearing you over it.
Dominic, type your question into the chat and then Jay can read it and tell everybody what you're saying, because
Thank you.
I'm having trouble hearing you as well.
Okay, so
So in the meantime, Tara had noted in the chat. Oh, sorry. Tara noted in the chat that physical variation between any group of cisgender female or male athletes is generally more extreme than between cisgender and transgender folks. That's accurate. There is the extent to which physical sex is less even a spectrum than a cloud is something that I think there's more and more discussion of and more scientific literature about. But yeah, there is absolutely more variation between or more or as much variation within assigned sexes as there is between, and especially when you're talking about trans people who've been on HRT for a significant period of time, the differences become very different. But Samantha, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. This was really great. And thank you so much for the resources that you gave in the chat. I didn't know those Substacks or those writers, so I'm really grateful. What's striking to me is the parallels and the intersectionality, first of all, with other forms of prejudice, but then also with other forms of, which is kind of obvious, but also with other forms of like legislation, right? And we seem to have this issue in the United States with not allowing people to make their own decisions about their bodies, right? So it's the same thing with abortion, right?
And specifically people perceived as women, and specifically people perceived as younger women. The amount of the anti-trans panic that's being specifically around, oh my God, they're convincing girls to mutilate themselves is like there's a really intense threat of paternalism there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so that was the other thing I was gonna say. It's so ageist, right? Like as if you don't have autonomy as a child. And that says a lot about, you know, parenting methods and traditions throughout the generations. But that really struck me. And then I'm thinking about this cast report. I don't know much about it. I have a feeling, I thought I read something, but I could be completely wrong, that J.K. Rowling was involved. But her whole thing, I'm not as close to this as some people. So I actually like made myself read her like crazy blog posts. And I'm not gonna like I'm not gonna like refer to it like, you know, but her whole thing about like, it's so self-righteous. Like she seems to think that she's helping people. Like she has it in her head that she's helping people. And that's the kind of like language that I around, that's like what I hear when I'm up against TERFs, like when I'm in academia and I find out that, you know, somebody I know is a TERF, and trans exclusionary radical feminist, for people that don't know. And they're, you know, they think that like you said, like people's people are having their, you know, that men are like convincing them to mutilate their gender. Or back when the L word was on and there were those all that horrible, you know, if you watch the L word, there was a character that was like non-binary and then decided to start taking testosterone, and some of the women on the L word were like, how could you not want to be the most beautiful thing, a woman? So it's just, it's so much binary divisions, right? And so we're like combating not only people like the people that you would expect, like the people that don't like abortion and the people that are like, you know, always against liberals or always against liberalism, but we're combating people within our own, like the people that we feel comfortable with, right? Who are like, just because they feel like they need to like control their people, or they can't just let other people be themselves. It's just
you used the word comfortable, and I think that's a really critical term in this conversation, because I think what you're getting with Rowling and what you're getting with the whole I don't want to pee next to a trans woman branch of primarily cisgender women is people who are conflating comfort with safety, who are saying, I am uncomfortable with things, I think this thing I don't understand, therefore it makes me unsafe, or therefore my comfort is of equivalent value to the safety of this other woman who otherwise would actually be put in a position where she would be actively unsafe if she were forced to use the men's room. And that's the comfort, safety, value question is so central to so much of this. I think
That is
that's a
amazing.
really,
Yeah.
really critical term to have brought up into that.
That's like white liberal, that's like white woman liberalism in a nutshell there, though. That enable that, like, you know, conflating comfort and safety. Don't you think? It goes also with race, right? Well, I'm not comfortable maybe being
Yeah,
with a
exactly.
a large looking, you know, Black person, but is it that you're not comfortable, or they say instead, oh, I'm unsafe, you know, like the woman
Yeah.
in Central Park. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Yeah, I would say the critical distinction when you're talking about this is that comfort is your problem and safety is everyone's problem. So, Helen? You're still muted, I'm sorry. You're still muted.
Okay, sorry about
There
that.
you go.
Thanks very much, Jay. This was a really interesting presentation and very helpful on many levels. I was happy to see the list of different organizations that are supporting people in different parts of the country. Can whoever's typing mute themselves?
Sorry,
But,
that's me.
oh, that's you. Sorry. But I'm just curious, which are the key organizations that are doing national work? Who are the spokes people that are most effective?
The TLDEF is probably the first place I'd point people to. I don't have their URL up right now, but I'm going to put their initials in the chat. It's Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, which is in the process of merging with the other major trans organization. The ACLU does significant work, but I think tends to be more effective on a local than a national level, and that is really, really heavily regionally moderated. I'd say yeah, TLDF is probably the place I'd point you to for that.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Jay? Dominic, would you be able to type your question in the chat?
Am I heard?
Yeah, your sound clearer now.
My trans female friend went to the main rabbi of Poland, who is actually Orthodox, but because what else could he possibly be? And she asked him if she's going to have a circumcision. He told her, of course not, because you are a woman. If you are bivalent, a woman, there's no circumcision cases in the male body if somebody has just a penis. And I guess the same reason is withdrawing blood when it comes to trans men. For me, it has no sense at all. I heard that these Orthodox rabbis are debating it because David Freeman has just enlightened me on the case, but nobody else is doing basically any problems.
So if anyone is interested in some of the theological stuff coming out of and around the trans community, I have a link up that I will find, which is the Trans Halakha project coming out of Sfara, which is a yeshiva in Chicago and specifically led by trans and queer people that's doing really, really interesting work. Now, of course, this is coming from the far left of Jewish tradition, and there's a lot less acceptance of that. And I question, to what extent extremely Orthodox rabbis would accept their studies as law. But there's still even discussion within the Orthodox community because, again, in theory, the Talmud allows for something like 6 different sexes. And if you include Midrash and other texts in there, there's precedent for the premise of souls having genders that don't necessarily align with the bodies that they inhabit, and different processes and remedies around that. So this is still something that when they can get past the political angle and knee-jerk response of it, even some fairly orthodox rabbis have been willing to actually have pretty serious conversations on ways to include trans folks in Jewish communities, which is something that I'd like to see more of, because this is something that there's a rabbi and writer named Abby Stein, the name I'm going to drop here again.
Yeah, we know her.
Yeah, who can comment on in a good deal more knowledgeably than I can. So I need to wrap up soon because I have a 1-year-old who's up past their bedtime watching, who has been extremely patient and apparently has been trying to feed the video of me a pacifier for the last half hour.
Thank you so much, Jay.
But I'm going to drop my email address in the chat and say that if anyone has questions, like, I recognize that this can be complicated stuff to discuss publicly. And if anyone has questions or just wants someone to listen confidentially or any of that, I'm around. And thank you all so much for listening and for learning and for following forward. And again, if there are any links that I forgot or that anyone needs, again, I'll keep those tabs open for another couple days.
Thanks very much, Jay.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you. And I'm going to drop out of the Zoom now. And
thank you very much for
Thank you.
a very informative talk. Really, really wonderful. And we hope you'll talk to us again and again and again. It was great.